And we're on. This is the great classic rock debate. I'm Kenny.
I'm Paul with zero qualifications.
And Steve should be joining us shortly. We talk anything
Shortly.
and everything classic rock. We try to keep it interesting. We try to have fun. If you're watching right now, please like, comment, and subscribe. We will love you for that. And also share it with your friends. And hopefully they'll find us entertaining also. Okay, tonight's show, we're not going to talk about one-hit wonders, but this is sort of similar in some ways to a one-hit wonder. What we're looking for are the rock artists who established themselves by virtue of either a great album or a great song, one or the other, doesn't matter. And it doesn't have to be their debut album. A lot of times it's going to be, but sometimes a artist records one or two albums that don't go anywhere, and it's the third album that launches them into superstardom. Anyway, my point is they have this moment in their career when they are suddenly launched into stardom. They sell millions of records, and their career is made. However, for the next 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 years, they continue to record, they continue to make records, but they are never able to reach that same level of success. Now, I want to emphasize this next part. We're not talking about one-hit wonders. If the band in question is a one-hit wonder, that is not to be included in tonight's conversation. They have to have more hits, but hits that just didn't reach the same type of success as this one that launched them. And I also want to point out that when we think of the real titans of classic rock, okay, the Led Zeppelins, the Rolling Stones, the Deep Purple, these bands didn't just maintain that sort of success for years. They did it for decades. Okay. That's me. Can you hear me okay? Paul, can you hear me okay? Apparently he can't because he's not saying anything.
No, go ahead.
You can hear me.
You say that again.
Okay. So anyway, all I'm saying is when we think of, okay, you can hear me or you can't?
I cannot. I can.
Okay. When we think of the bands who the real titans of classic rock, Led Zeppelin, Rolling Stones, Deep Purple, Beatles, whatever, they cranked out hits, not just for years, but for decades. Okay.
Sure.
And that's kind of what sets them apart. The fact that they were able to keep doing it and maintain that standard for so long, as opposed to somebody who reaches that standard once, but then can never get back to it. Okay. And this is not an attack on those bands. It's just an illustration of how difficult that is.
Very hard to do.
When we spoke earlier, I chose Joan Jett as my example of sort of what we're talking about. Okay. I know she had been in a band prior. I forget what they were called.
The Runaways. The Runaways.
Okay. And then she goes, she breaks off from them and does her own thing with her own band, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. And their first album, I Love Rock and Roll, it sells millions. The song, the single, I Love Rock and Roll, it goes to #1 on the charts, and it stays there for at least a couple of months. Oh, here comes Steve. Good timing. And so you would think, having achieved this sort of success on her very first album, man, you can kind of assume, Steve, welcome aboard.
Welcome.
You're a minute or two behind us, so you haven't missed anything. And I'm sort of giving the explanation of what we're doing. And I'm talking about Joan Jett. She's our example. But she continued to record after this amazing success of her debut album. She continued to record for at least more than 10 years, 12. She recorded on into the 90s and had more hits, but never came close to that type of success again. So we're sort of looking for those kind of artists who, as opposed to reaching a standard and maintaining it, they reached it, but then could never get back to it. And Steve, I want to emphasize that we're not doing one-hit wonders. So if the band or artist in question is a one-hit wonder, that's not to be included in tonight. Okay, everybody understands?
Yes.
Okay, so does anybody want to go first? I'll be happy to.
No, go ahead and start talking about Joan Jett.
Okay, well, she released her debut album. Okay, the album I think was released in '81, but the song was released either late 81 or early 82, whichever it was, but it was 82 during which it stayed at #1 for like at least 10 weeks, something like that. So, I mean, and to this day, that song is still, you can hear it on not just classic rock stations. My classic rock station that I criticize so often, they play it regularly. Okay.
And which song is that?
I Love Rock and Roll.
Yeah. And which isn't that the one of her songs? I don't think it's I Love Rock and Roll. It's
called
is
Do
on
You
Sunday
Want to
Night
Touch?
Football.
Yeah. Do you want to touch? Yeah. Do you want to touch me there?
Steve, I apologize, but Paul was interrupting and I couldn't tell what you were saying.
No,
I answered Steve's question.
No, the song, she has a song that they redid as the theme song
Crimson
for
and Clover
for Sunday Night Football.
Oh,
Like
I thought that was
I
Carrie
Love Rock
Underwood.
and Roll. No, they just changed
Is it
it.
I Love Rock and Roll?
Rock and Roll. Yeah.
I think you're right. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it is. Yeah, that is. Yeah.
So it's still, my point is, it's still relevant to this day, but
Correct.
Oh yeah.
kids
Correct.
today probably have no idea that.
Correct.
That's Joan Jett.
But classic rock still, nobody can debate or dispute how big this song was in 1980. It was huge.
Oh yeah, that was probably the first rock song I remember hearing as a kid. Where I was like,
you were
I
3, Steve.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying like I was
He
like
5.
Yeah, I was 5.
Right.
It was 19. I was born in 77, so
yeah.
But I was like, I really dig this. So
and that song to this day, I mean, if we're being honest, it's really the only song that she's still known for. But she had other hits.
Well, she had Crimson
and
Clover.
Do You Want to Touch? You talked about. And didn't she do
Crimson
a version of The Little Drummer Boy, which I thought was weird because it wasn't Christmas
Crimson
time?
and Clover was a cover of Tommy James,
Crimson
right?
and Clover, yes. And then she made an album of all covers because she did Love Hurts, which was a Nazareth song.
Yeah, good
Even
song,
though
actually.
it was a Nazareth, they covered it also. It was originally by the Everly Brothers. How about that?
No, they were Teeks.
I did not know
Yes,
that.
correct. But my point is that she had other songs. She had other hits. She kept recording. She was just never able to reach the heights that she launched herself with, which was I Love Rock and Roll. And all these years later, that's really the only song she's still known for.
Is that a cover? I Love Rock and Roll? Is that the original song
I
of
think
hers?
it's a cover. I think it's a cover.
Yeah, I think
it is too.
Yeah, it was. And the original is kind of unknown. But yeah, it's a cover.
She had that one hit called Cherry Bomb, which is not a good song with the Runaways.
That was with the Runaways.
Right, but she had, that band had
That's a great
very
song.
talented Cherry Curry and what's the other girl? Lita Ford. They
Yes.
all went off and had pretty good careers.
Correct. Yeah. I like Lita Ford. Okay, so anyway, you guys, somebody take it and run.
Steve, you go next. Unless you want me to go.
Well, all I'm going to say is that this person probably doesn't, I don't know if it fits the definition, but Billy Idol. And I love Billy Idol. And his probably.
What?
Well, he's had a lot of hits.
He doesn't fit the definition.
He doesn't fit. Well, I will say this. Joan Jett is going on tour with Billy Idol this year. So go check it out.
I saw that.
All right.
So go ahead, Paul. I don't have a good one.
I'm going to go with Rat.
I think that's
Rat
a good choice.
came out with Out of the Cellar. They had an album before that
84.
called Rat.
Okay, but 84 was the one that launched them. So
Yeah. And then that song. When I first heard that song, I was like, I was just destroyed. Like, I was like, I cannot get this song out of my head, and I still can't, even now. And
I think it's fair to say that in 1984, it was kind of overplayed. Man, did they play it a lot.
Yeah,
MTV
okay, fair
was
enough.
Crushing it.
And so they got a lot of plays. I don't know if they headlined. I wasn't going to the concert. I was still maybe. But then they had the second big hit, which a lot of people like the song better, called Way Cool Jr.
Right.
Which is a badass song. I mean, it is badass. And then
it's not as good as Round Around. It's decent.
I'm not saying I say that, but
Fair
a lot
enough.
of people do say that.
Fair enough. Okay.
But after that, they just, I don't know if they ran out of the machine. Like, we talked about this before. Eddie Trunk, that guy, he says they have their whole life to do that first album.
Yep.
Then you find out, and you know what happens is, I think, like, and I'm going to go off tangent, forgive me, the Police, they started, the Stewart and Andy started realizing that Sting was a god. And he could make a hit machine. And they said, okay, we'll work together. We're just going to let you do what you're going to do and get out of the way. and so maybe Rat Stephen Piercy is the singer. What's the guy's guitar player? He's
Yeah.
pretty good. Wayne Danuzzi, I can't remember anymore. But yeah. So you run out of talent, or you run out of collaboration,
Right.
drugs, women, the road.
Right.
Our case. I'm done.
And then sometimes it's just that the conditions in that moment were just right, and you still kept making quality material. It just didn't catch the way that one did. But that's a good example though, because they did record throughout the 80s and never reached that type of success again. Okay, should I go next?
Steve, you ready?
Well, you guys are going to have to help me out here for a second. So we had mentioned Twisted Sister a couple of
That was one of mine. Go for it.
shows
That's a
ago.
great
But I
choice.
would say nothing ever really, they never really reached anything beyond We're Not Gonna Take It, which I don't know if that was their first or it was either first or second release, but it was really the first well-known song, at least to
That
me.
was their second one.
I want to
because-
rock, and We're Not going to take it from the same album. So they count as one. That's that's easy.
In my mind, I'm like, they're great songs, and those are really the only two Twisted Sister songs that I know of.
Right.
Well, they have that
That
song where
album.
they kind of worship Satan or something. Remember, it's actually in Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Where
Okay, I
Pee-wee
guess I don't
going
know
through
this one.
Hollywood,
Wait,
and he walks
towards the
into
end of the
like
movie,
a Godzilla movie. And then he walks into like a beach bingo dance movie. Then he walks into a Twisted Sister, and they're like,
They're shooting
Satan. It's really funny.
Yeah, they're shooting a music video when he's like on the back lot there at Hollywood.
Twisted Sister. So,
Okay. I saw that movie, but I don't remember any of this. So
yeah.
But I mean, can
All right, so
anybody
that was
name,
good with Steve. Twisted Sister.
I mean,
Back-
Twisted
go ahead.
Sister, they're still recording songs to this day.
right.
Yep.
No, that's a perfect choice. That's a great example because they were everywhere in that moment. They were all over MTV, and the rock stations were playing those two songs to death. Also, go ahead, Paul.
You were to mention the Al Gore, Tipper Gore
Well, I was
thing,
gonna say,
right?
Dee Snider testified in front of Congress too. So.
And he was like staking out like the conservative position or whatever, which was weird.
Like Liberty. And then, of course, we can't say this without talking about Cinderella, who could be another band in our category. Who?
That was my next one.
Okay.
So go ahead, Steve. You do it.
No, I mean their first album is really well known. The first couple of hits, and why are there some I think it's Night Songs may have been their first album.
Yeah, I think so.
And they're really like a blues based kind of band, but they're regarded as a hair band.
Right.
Yeah, they're not a
Like
hair
doing
band,
so.
really.
But I don't think, they're not a hair band. But I don't think anything really ever eclipsed their that first album.
You're
Well,
correct.
is No Shelter or Give Me Shelter, whatever it's called, is that on that first album?
Shelter Me is off
Shelter Me.
from 1990, and it was kind of like that was like their last, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. But I mean, like commercially,
Right.
their first album, which the songs are escaping me right now.
Yeah.
Because he says Tipper testified before the record committee. She said she saw the devil on MTV. She was referring to Dee Snider.
Right.
And you're like, you are an idiot.
Right.
Tipper
Yeah.
Gore. Like,
What
stop.
a weird.
Nobody's
what a weird thing that was.
Fool is probably their bit.
That's a good song.
Yeah,
That's
probably
probably
their
their
biggest hit.
biggest hit.
Yeah. I think
I'm
so.
a big Cinderella fan. Big.
Yeah,
All right,
I
Kenny.
love Tom Kiefer's voice.
Okay, so I'm going to go. Now, here's my next choice. And then before you jump to any conclusions, let me explain. All right. I'm choosing Toto. Toto launched in 1978, self-titled debut album, and Hold the Line, the
song.
lead single and the big classic rock masterpiece from that album. Again, all over the radio. There was no MTV yet in those days, but all over the radio. And to this day, still played on classic rock stations. Now,
Great song.
Toto went on to enormous success with their fourth album, Toto 4. However, for the purposes of our discussion, we look through the lens of classic rock. And Toto 4, it was a pop rock album, but it was not a classic rock album. Okay. So they achieved great success after Hold the Line, but it was not within the boundaries of classic rock. So I'm sort of making stipulations here to make this one work, but I still think that this is an example. They did release more classic rock type of material, but it never hit the way that first album with Hold the Line did. So Toto is my choice there.
So Toto 4 had Africa, right?
Yeah, and Rosanna, and look, it had a lot of good songs. And at the time it was popular, I played it over and over, man. It's 10 songs and all 10 are great, but they're not rockers. They've got an element of rock, but they're not rockers. It's just it's pop with rock sensibility.
Yeah. Well, what's funny about Toto is I don't think I heard Hold the Line until probably the late 80s.
Because
And
you're
I
young,
always
yeah.
Toto from Rosanna and Africa, which I liked.
Right.
But when I heard Hold the Line, I'm like, this song kicks ass. I'm like, and then I found out it's Toto. I'm like, wait a second.
Right.
And then I learned more about Steve Lukather and how
Oh my God,
brilliant guitar player and how many thousands of songs he's recorded on. And so like Toto is probably it's a good choice, Kenny, and they're probably one of the most underappreciated bands.
I agree with that. And, you know, we've talked before how the second half of the 70s, Steve, I know you were young, but the second half of the 70s was a real, I hate to use the word weak, it was a drop off for the rock universe. There just was not a lot of great rock being cranked out during that period. And this song just shows up out of nowhere. It's catchy, but at the same time, it rocks, and radio embraces it. A lot of times, disco was so popular that radio wanted songs to have some element of disco in there, and this didn't. But it really stood out from the crowd in 1978, late 78, when it was released, and it's, to me, still sounds great to this day.
Couldn't agree more.
Oh no, everyone in that band is super ridiculously talented.
Super talented, definitely.
Say that and just get that out of the way.
That's what led to that's what started them up. These guys all knew each other from doing studio sessions, you know, so they formed a band.
Yeah,
okay, who's up?
They were big fans of Wizard of Oz, but anyway. Okay, I'm gonna go next. Steve, Kenny and I talked a little bit about, I would say, the band Asia, because they had this album, and Kenny, there was about a year there when I was a freshman at Auburn. I think I played that album every other day.
Yep.
And
1982, self-titled debut album.
And then I don't know what happened. Did I get tired of it, or and then the second album came out. I'm like,
yeah.
And then I was like, they're out of material. Call Eddie Trunk for help.
Yeah. The first album, which even to this day I consider it a really good album. However, I didn't fully understand this at that time. I get it now, though. Asia was a supergroup. All four guys came from other established bands, but they made a calculated decision when they made this album they wanted the songs to have mainstream accessibility.
Absolutely right.
They kept them to 3.5 minutes or so. They didn't have the long songs with the solos, and they didn't have that. They kept them fairly short. Definitely a pop flavor. There were rock songs with a lot of pop flavor in there. And although they were kind of catchy, as time passed, they didn't have an enduring appeal. And the second album was way more mediocre. What's interesting about Asia is they were still recording up into the mid, 2015, 2016, somewhere around there. They've been through more personnel changes than you could keep up with. But I will say this, and this is definitely a compliment. I've downloaded a bunch of the stuff and just given it a listen here and there, and I'm impressed at the quality of the music. They sort of abandoned that whole mainstream thing and went to a much more progressive rock direction with it. But it's got lots of elements of Yes in there, you know.
Was Carl Palmer the drummer? and John Wetton, the singer, and I don't, was it Alan Howell or Steve Howe from Yes, the guitar player?
Jeff Downs. Jeff Downs. Yeah. Carl Palmer, John Wetton.
The singer.
Yeah, and someone else who I don't remember.
But yeah,
being a drummer, Carl Palmer was probably the one that I was most familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he had
the album, I want to emphasize this, the album went to #1. 2 or 3 songs on there were released as singles and got a lot of radio play.
Yeah.
And then they continued recording, sold some records, but never came close to matching that success again. So that's exactly what we're looking for.
And that's the album with, I'm assuming, In the Heat of the Moment.
Yeah, or Heat of the Moment. Yeah.
Heat of the Moment,
okay.
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And Soul Survivor. And they had, the song was, I recall the songs being really good.
Some good songs on there. Yeah.
That's an example of, again, the super groups. And again, they've gone through a lot of lineup changes, but they, for whatever reason, the super groups generally are not as great as like the original bands they came from.
Yeah. Well, they're good on paper, but it doesn't always work out well.
Yeah. I think it's similar to something in sports. So we don't go on a sports tangent, but a team will win the Super Bowl, their Major League Baseball World Series, and there's this guy. He bats .239, and he hits a home run. Like Jim Leyritz. Oh my God, this guy was a catcher for the Yankees, .235 hitter. The Braves are up like 3-1 or 2-0. Yeah. And we're about 3-0. And the bottom of the ninth, he hits a 3-run homer off of Mark Wohlers. And the Yankees come back and win the World Series.
They won 4 in a row, I think, after that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you're like, and so this is, I'm going to make an analogy for this Jim Leyritz. This is not a good analogy. I'm going to take it back. But look at Led Zeppelin. Look at Led Zeppelin without John Paul Jones. Page and Plant made this album, and it's average at best. I'm sorry, Steve.
I thought it was better than average, but it's not Led Zeppelin.
Walking in the Clarksdale is a great album.
I thought it was
I don't think so, but that's okay. But
it really had to grow on me. I didn't like it on first listen.
I love it.
You're like, what's wrong? What's missing? And it's obvious.
2 members.
2. No, I know. And they are the glue of Led Zeppelin.
I don't disagree with that.
And Jimmy Page even recognizing, whoa, without Bonham, we don't got much here. I mean, we got a lot.
They didn't sell that album as Led Zeppelin. They sold it as
I know. I'm well aware.
I think the people who bought it were really hoping to capture Led Zeppelin there. And
so, I knew what I was getting. I was getting half of Led Zeppelin, which is better than none of Led Zeppelin's.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
fair enough.
And I love this. I love the songs on that. So,
but the bands
better than anything they did in the '80s, which was nothing.
No argument there.
But it's also better. It's better than anything Robert Plant, and I like his solo work. But I think it's better than his any of his solo records.
But I'm just saying, without that guy or woman to be the glue and be behind the scenes with the band, you know, I mean, the Beatles are like, okay, you just take the Beatles and you like, they're so great. All 4 of them, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so you get this band, but that's what's fascinating about Asia. These great players, but there's missing something, right? They're missing this glue person who come up with melodies. And that's the hardest. If you talk to these guys like Chris Jericho, you know who that is, Steve, right?
Yeah, the wrestler.
And he's also plays with
Fugazi. Yeah.
Yeah. And he talked about that. It's these riffs. When I got to hang out with the Darkness, okay, this band, and we were talking, and they're like, what's the hard? They're like coming up with a riff. Because once I got the riff, I could put the songs, the melody, everything fit on top of that. But without that riff, you don't have a lot, you know? And anyway, that's me pontificating. And that's why some of these bands, like Steve, Asia should have had 55 great albums in a row.
You would think.
They did. You would think, right.
Right.
Kenny, I'm sorry for rambling. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. And also, I want to mention the song "Only Time Will Tell," which was off of that same album, which was a good song and got a fair amount of radio play.
Whew. I have to buy that album. Yeah. That's
yeah.
You're
okay,
up, Steve,
should I go? Who's up?
I got one. So going
Go
back to 1990, this may be a bit blasphemous, but it's the Black Crowes.
So I'm with you.
The first album, Shake Your Moneymaker, had Twice as Hard, Jealous Again, Hard to Handle, She Talks to Angels.
Talks to Angels.
So 4 really great tracks. The next album was followed up the Southern Harmony and Musical Companion. And there's a couple decent songs on there.
Decent, yeah.
Really, Remedy is probably the only really
Yeah.
notable song on
That
there.
name's heard.
But it was just not anywhere near the top of what
Yep.
they did the first record. And really since then, I mean, they did a live album. They toured with Jimmy Page back in like 2000.
Right.
But really for me, that's it. They released an album about a year ago.
They've been
And
recording all these years. They've made a bunch of albums. Yeah.
but nothing's stuck with me.
Nope.
And
They've sold some records, but they've never captured the magic of that first one, which was huge. And every one of those songs you named are fantastic classic rock songs.
yeah, and I remember as a kid, I was like, because this was in the early 90s, so grunge was starting to be a thing, but they were dressing like they were from the 70s.
Right.
So it was, I saw them on TV. I'm like, these guys are out in bell bottoms and everything. And
right.
I was like, man, this music rocks, but I'm not so sure if I like their look. Again, that's 13-year-old me not liking things that look like the Hardy Boys at the time. So
Right.
The Hardy Boys.
Well, I just remember growing up looking at bell bottoms and like old TV shows and thinking that's atrocious. But
right.
Well, Kenny and I both wore them.
We did. We did.
All right, Kenny, you're up, buddy.
Okay, I'm going to go with. I don't know how well you got. I know you're going to know his name, and you can name one song. I'm pretty sure. Jerry Rafferty.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Can you guys name more than one song by him, just out of curiosity?
Come on.
Just Baker Street.
Okay, Paul.
Forgot. God, another name. It's got like 400 million views. Oh God, I forgot the name of the song.
Okay, you're going to say "Stuck in the Middle with You," but I'm not talking about that because that was when he was with Steelers Wheel.
No,
I did not know that's where he came from. So
yeah. Okay.
The reason, woman, you're the reason I love everything, or something like that.
Jerry Rafferty.
Jerry Rafferty.
No, it's the other song.
Okay. Off the same album, which was titled Baker Street, he had a song called Right Down the Line.
That's it.
Okay. And then he had another song called Home and Dry. Do you remember Home and Dry?
No. I've heard that album when I was in high school.
Okay. All right. And then in the next couple of years, he recorded albums that spawned singles that got radio airplay. So
he got cancer.
He died just a couple of years ago. Yeah, just 2 or 3 years ago.
Oh, I thought it was a while back. No,
it was just a few years ago. But my point is, he remained a big name in Scotland. That's where he was from, and in Europe as a whole. So he continued recording and remained popular for years over in Europe. But in the United States, he had that initial Baker Street thing that he was never able to recapture. Again, I downloaded some of his 90s material and played it. It's some great songs. Oh my God. Guy was a gifted songwriter, really good. But here in the States, never got any play.
I am blown away. I did not know he was from Scotland. I thought he was like from San Francisco or something.
Nope. He's a Scot.
Because you don't hear his singing voice at all.
Exactly. Right. Oh, and I'll mention, not that it's related to the topic, but apparently at some point in time, there was this huge controversy. I think it even turned into a legal battle over who played the saxophone on that song. There were several different families who were claiming it was their departed grandfather or great uncle or somebody and they were suing each other. And finally, I don't know how he finally got settled it. And the guy's name, finally everybody agreed, okay, this was the guy. I think they even had video of him playing it or something. But I read this a while back. It was this big, enormous fight over who played the saxophone.
It's is that the similar story to I fell in love with the French Connection? The guy Bruce. His name is Starbuck.
Oh,
the guy who played
Moonlight Feels Right.
Yeah, I think the guy who played the xylophone was just like there for the day. I mean, he was just like, "Hey, come here and play this." And he did it the first time, and they're like, "What?"
I think you're right. I think you're right. Professor of Rock did an entire.
I saw. That's why I
he
got
did an
that.
episode on that, and it was great. And I'll tell you something. His videos are so good, and
Yeah.
he comes up with stuff, and you go, "Oh my God, where does he get this stuff?" It's great trivia information, but man, it really fills in the blanks or whatever. Gentlemen, we just got our warning, so about 5 minutes or so, and we'll wrap it up. Who's next?
All right, Steve, go ahead.
Go ahead, Paul. I'm scrambling here.
Would you say, Kenny? Because this is I just want to need help.
Okay.
Would you say Steve Miller?
No.
No.
Trust me, I thought about him because the Joker was the one that launched him. He had been around for years, but that was the one where he had the big hit.
A bunch of
But
hits.
then he had Fly Like an Eagle and Take the Money and Run and
but then this happened.
Then Abracadabra.
Yeah, but my point is his popularity was sustained over a period. It wasn't a moment. It was sustained.
I worship Steve Miller. Saved me in high school and junior high.
And he had a couple of songs in the early to mid '90s too. That were kind of top 40.
Abracadabra was a good song.
Yeah. So we're not gonna. Here's who I'm gonna go with. Kansas. Okay.
Oh, I did think about that.
Okay. Kansas had recorded 3 albums prior to Left Overture.
Yes.
And the people who knew them loved them, but they had not become a thing. So in 77 or 76, whatever it was, they released Left Overture. Carry On Wayward Son soars into the stars. What an enormous hit. By the way, that song will never stop being great. Okay. So from out of nowhere, all of a sudden they're huge. That song is huge. The album and the singles sell millions.
Very good album.
Yeah, really good. Kansas continued to record, and they had more hits, and they had more really good songs, but nothing that came close to Carry On Wayward Son.
Well, I think Dust in the Wind actually sold more, if you can look that up, because I
saw
what?
You might be right. You might be right.
Because that song went around the whole effing world.
Correct.
Versus...
And it got played on pop stations and adult contemporary stations or whatever, not just rock stations.
But that's that guy who I can't remember his name.
Kerry Livgren.
He was by himself wherever he lived, and he got on the phone. Hey, all right, here's our next song. Is We're Dust, and they were like speechless. He sang the song to them over the phone, and they go, okay, we got to start recording, and then. Man, they're a really interesting band. Point of No Return. That's the album before.
That was the album right after, and it was really good. And it spawned Dust in the Wind and the title track, Point of No Return. The album didn't sell near as many as Left Overture, but you're right. Dust in the Wind sold a lot of records.
But they fell off, and I don't. Again.
They had a few '80s hits but nothing like.
Well, little known thing, they had a gun to their head. Like if Left Overture hadn't sold, they were going to be dropped.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I guess Professor Rock does a show on that, and that's how I know about it.
All right.
If I never hear Carry On Wayward Son ever again, I will be happy.
Not me. I'll never get tired of it.
It's like Pink Floyd. I've heard it 1,000 times.
Fair enough.
It's a good song. It's a good song. I'm not knocking.
Okay, we're going to run out of time, so I'm going to throw one more at you. You guys are going to
I got to go real quick.
Go ahead.
You got to check out Guar's cover of Carry On My Wayward. It is the absolute masterpiece.
Okay.
Guar blows that song away. Otis Arungus, rest in peace.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Steve, you got something?
Real quick, and it's kind of cheating, but it's Nirvana. Never liked them, but nothing's going to top the success of their first album.
No, I actually had them on my list.
In Utero, there's a couple songs on there. I never cared for Nirvana anyways.
Right.
And
yes, I know.
I am not a Foo Fighters fan either. I guess they're carrying the rock torch still, but not my deal.
No, I think Nirvana, I had them on my list. I think they're a good example of it. Last one, and I don't think you guys are going to agree with me, but I'm right and you're wrong. This is going to be Kiss, okay? I Want to Rock and Roll All Night. Huge. It became not just a rock classic, but a party. Do you know when I DJ that people ask me to play that to this day? Now Kiss had a lot more success and they sold a lot more records, but nothing compared to Rock and Roll All Night. If you disagree, tell me.
I disagree. I agree in the fact that that's their probably biggest hit. but
Yes.
they have as you know, a very deep catalog.
Right.
No shit.
And
Like Destroyer is in my top 10 of all time albums. I heard the album when I was like 12, and even now when I hear Detroit Rock City, I'm ready to rock and roll with somebody. Like that song fires me up. And that whole album is a masterpiece. I don't really like Beth too much,
Yeah. I
but
could take it or leave
yeah,
it.
that album is a masterpiece up there with
Okay.
Zeppelin and Sabbath. That's just my humble
Okay.
opinion.
All right. Now we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. If you're watching right now, please tell us your opinions in the comments section, or you can tell us why we're right or wrong. That'll be fine too. Okay. You guys have any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah,
I just want to say,
Guar.
Love Gun. I have no idea what that song is about by Kiss. Somebody put in the comments of the
Yeah,
video.
no, you don't have to do that.
That's what Cupid does. He's got a love arrow.
Okay. Now, if you guys want, we can do more on this one next time, or we can go in a different direction. Doesn't matter, but we'll give that some thought. But for now, we are the Great Classic Rock Debate. I am Kenny.
Paul.
I'm Steve.
If you're watching right now, please like, comment, and subscribe. We will love you for that. Share it with your friends. Until we meet again, we'll see you next time.